I touch the earth, but never the ground. My footfall makes no sound. Light the flame, light the fire, keys in my hand, ready to burn it down. I ride the fire, ride the flame, move so fast, have no name, can't slow me down. Wind in my hair, ready to run, run, run.
At the birth of every culture, there is a tool, a technology, an idea, a new way to fulfill our most basic human desires. It begins as a promise and becomes an organizing principle. It unfolds a series of choices, each one shaping our movement, our identities, and our lives, often in ways we had never imagined.
My generation was subjected to billions of dollars of television advertising by automobile companies that told me that owning my own car would bring me freedom and autonomy and social status and sex. That a car would be an extension of my identity, and that the freedom of mobility that the car offers, and it's amazing, right? I can come and go whenever I want, right? I'm weather protected. I have a locker for my stuff. And if I have a nice car, I feel really, really good.
Human beings are famously a tool creating animal, and one of the tools we like to create is tools that make us more mobile, faster, that impel our journey, whether on water or land. And so it's not surprising that an automobile would come and emerge out of that impulse, which is deeply rooted in human culture. It actually started when we were hunters. That premium on speed, in a sense, is genetic. It was built in.
A lot of those primitive things get invested in cars perceptually. Since they're part of our environment from the very beginning, I think that you start categorizing them, you start identifying them, you start noticing who drives a what. He drives a Cadillac, he must be powerful. The librarian drives a Volkswagen Beetle, they must be thrifty. You know, you start identifying personal characteristics with type of car they drive. They become extensions of one's personality.
This is the culture of the personal automobile, a peculiar dream of mobility that's dense with contradictions. It accelerates individual journeys, but brings cities to a standstill. Designed for safety, it endangers our lives. And the more we travel alone, the larger our vehicles grow.
Urban highways destroy quality of life. Urban highways are like poisonous rivers, like sarin rivers. People cannot get near them, they cannot be next to them. They cannot cross them. They are like fences in a cow pasture. They restrict freedom, mobility. They lower values of homes around them. And they are jammed. They don't solve anything. They are always jammed.
40 hours a year. The average American sits in traffic. That's a full week's worth of vacation time sitting in traffic congestion. It costs us over $120 billion per year in wasted fuel and lost productivity.
It's the same problem everywhere in the world. And what that problem is fundamentally a major hit to economic efficiency. So if people are not working, they're not producing. And when they're sitting in traffic, they're not working. A number of studies have been done by World Bank and others that show just how severe a hit to productivity there is from the traffic in the large emerging market cities.
So how did our cities and communities, with road systems designed for efficient movement, reach this point? And is traffic congestion really the main problem? Or is it a symptom of a more fundamental design flaw?
85% of cars on the road have one person in them. And yet we sit in traffic congestion and then we go mad. We don't have a road capacity problem. We have a seat underutilization problem. And we've tried for decades to accommodate these vehicles by widening and widening the roads. And unfortunately, there's a phenomenon called induced demand, whereby you create new capacity, and pretty soon that gets eaten up by new vehicles and new trips on the road.
Throwing more infrastructure at congestion never solves the congestion problem. What infrastructure does is it creates land value. In fact, that's the biggest effect of any transportation capital investment. It creates land value. Transportation capital projects also have a profound impact on social equity, on who wins and who loses in the urban economy. Transportation has a profound impact on public health. In fact, my physician friends routinely complain to me that I, as a transportation professional, have more impact on public health outcomes than they do as doctors. Their job is to clean up the problem once it's already happened, but the transportation industry, we're the ones responsible for delivering healthy places.
Maybe you live in a town where there's more acreage taken up by car dealerships than there are educational institutions, because your town values the sales tax income more than the educational benefit of the schools that are there. So your town is full of car dealerships. And you live in a town where the most complex, the most intensive structure, the biggest, the most overpowering of the landscape is the highway overpass that's right next to your strip mall or right next to your neighborhood.
In much of the United States, and increasingly throughout the world, the urban landscape is designed explicitly for personal car ownership. A single American housing unit can require 2, 3, or even 4 parking spaces. In suburbs, zoning laws erect legal barriers between housing and commercial districts. The unintended effect of these policies is that people, jobs, and communities have grown further and further apart. More often than not, driving is now the only way to get to work, pick up children at school, buy groceries, or go out for dinner. Elsewhere in the world, where urban population growth has outpaced new infrastructure, traffic congestion can paralyze cities for much of the day. 100 years ago, few would have conceived that the lives, homes, and cities of so many would revolve around a single transportation technology.
Any large road in a city, including what we call highways today, should have exclusive lanes for buses, should have protected bicycle ways, and should have large sidewalks.
The car is this thing that takes up space. It takes up space when we're driving it and when we're storing it. And its impact on the form of buildings is, in a lot of cases, directly detrimental to the sociability of the neighborhood.
We know now, finally, after hundreds of years of science, that the human body requires 10,000 steps every single day for optimal functioning. Places where everyone gets their 10,000 steps a day, these are very healthy places. They have extremely low medical costs. Places, neighborhoods, families that don't get their walking in or their biking or other forms of activity end up with vastly higher rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, all of the problems of sedentary lifestyles, and including as we get older with loss of bone density. If you don't design your city with walking and biking in mind, you are designing your city to be unhealthy.
If you look at the history of mankind, people are walkers. That's how we've gotten our exercise since the dawn of urbanization, is by walking around cities. It's only in the very modern era, and mostly in the United States, where we had this concept that we needed to get somewhere as fast as possible, and therefore we're going to use cars to do it. Really, walking is the natural mode of transportation for human beings.
In too many modern cities, life without a car seems almost unthinkable. Protected by larger vehicles, wider roads, and more advanced technology, the driver lives in a world designed for personal comfort and automotive safety. It's an environment that feels natural from behind the wheel. But step out of the car and set foot on the street, and the experience is dramatically different. On foot, the journey through an average city is a collection of unconnected pathways, vast parking lots, and dangerous crossings. This view from the street is one that too few people, including policymakers, have witnessed firsthand.
The United Nations has done studies and looked at how quickly will urbanization happen. And they've looked especially at mega cities, so large cities over 10 million people. And the conclusion from that study was that between 2010 and 2050, cities would grow on average with 1% per year. Now, what we see, as an example here in Stockholm, is that those growth figures don't match up. We already see that the last couple of years, the growth figures are probably double that amount, probably around 2% per year. The expectation is that it might be 3% over the next few years. Now, if that continues, then it won't take until 2050, when we're 40% more people in town. But it might be around 2030 that it already happens. Now, if we think that we have a problem now, when we spend about 17 working days per year in traffic jams, we spend about 30% of our time looking for parking spots, then we definitely have a problem when we're 40% more people already 2030.
I touch the earth whenever the ground, my football makes no sound. Light the flame, light the fire, keys in my hand, ready to burn it down. I ride the fire, ride the flame, move so fast I have no name. Can't slow me down, wind in my hair, ready to run, 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 run. I touch the earth but never the ground, my football makes no sound. Light the flame, light the fire, keys in my hand, ready to burn, burn.